Will a $1,400 or $2,000 fourth stimulus check be arriving in November or December? And if it is approved, can it get to us in that amount of time? All of that to be answered and covered in this video. Let's get into this right away. But really quickly before we do, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't done so yet, or if you happen to be new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button right down below the video, as I'm here with all of the latest updates each and every day, as well as helping you out in any way that I possibly can, as information is changing very rapidly. So again, thank you so much for watching this. Subscribe down below, and let's get into this right away. All right, so this question is actually prompted out of the comment section. I've seen this question down below a number of different times, written in a variety of different ways, but essentially asking, will we be getting a $1,400 fourth stimulus check or a $2,000 fourth stimulus check sometime in November or December or before the holidays? This is actually a really good question. Now, let's be real. We're getting into a time right now where, first off, it's getting to be kind of an expensive time of year, right? Everybody knows what we're talking about. With the holidays coming and, of course, with the colder season setting in, it starts to get really expensive with all of the extra bills as far as heating our homes and everything else going on, right? So there's people asking, are we going to be getting this stimulus check? We need money right now. We need an infusion of cash. Will we potentially be getting it before the holidays? It sure would be nice to have some gifts this year versus the last few years where nobody has. So I totally get it, yes. And I want to answer that for you in this video. Now, here's the thing. Before we get into this too far, I just have to stop for just a second and qualify all of this by saying, at this point, right here, right now, Congress has not approved a fourth stimulus check quite yet. So I wanted to make that very clear right now before we get into it any further so that there's no miscommunication on any of this going forward. All right. Now, with that being said, let's get into this and talk about it a little bit further and where we currently stand with a potential fourth stimulus check, what's going on with it, and if it happens to be approved sometime soon, could it potentially be arriving in November and or December, or how long would it actually take for them to actually get it out to us? Now, here's the thing. Let's remember this as well. The $1,400 stimulus check is coming from the Senior Citizens League. We know that story, right? We've gone over that before. But the Senior Citizens League was out in September, and they wrote the letter to Congress in October, and now here we sit and we're waiting. Now, the $2,000 stimulus check is in accordance with the letters that were drafted by over 80 members of Congress, and they sent it over to the president calling on a $2,000 stimulus check in the next stimulus package. All right, so also remember this. Regardless of how a stimulus check is actually passed, traditionally they have been adding them into stimulus packages. But also remember, a fourth stimulus check or stimulus checks of any kind could be passed at any given point with their own standalone legislation. They can do that. That's not a big deal. They can literally just write up the legislation and they could get it passed at any given point. So if it is not added into a stimulus package, that does not mean that it's game over. It doesn't mean that at all. It simply means maybe they haven't thought about it and maybe they haven't added into a stimulus package, but they could always come back at any given point and just pass it on its own standalone bill. They can do that. It's not that hard to do. So when it comes to a fourth stimulus check, first off, is it approved? No. Like I said a minute ago, it has not been approved by Congress. So with that being said, could Congress still approve a fourth stimulus check sometime in November or December and get it out to us? Yeah, absolutely they could. If they just so wanted to do so, they could write up the legislation. It would not be that hard to do. They could add it into any given package that's currently on the table right now, and they could get it out to the American people. So yeah, they could absolutely add it in. Now, the next question would be, if they did happen to put it into one of these packages that's currently out there now, when could we potentially be seeing it actually passed? Well, then the next question comes in is, when do these packages actually pass, right? When do they actually get the final legislation not only passed through the House, through the Senate, with any amendments that they make, anything like that, and then get it onto the president for a signature? At that point, then it becomes law, and then it moves into action, as in the distribution phase. Now, all of that would be like the whole timeline as far as all of that would need to be put in place to actually establish a timeline to when a fourth stimulus check could actually be distributed, right? So there's a lot of moving parts here. As you can see, there's a lot of different moving parts here. It needs to make its way through Congress, and then it needs to move on to the president for a signature. All right, but let's just anticipate that all of that does actually happen. And when would this actually be taking place? Well, again, when is it actually signed by the president? That's the final question that we need to understand, is because when it's actually signed by him, then it goes into law, and then we have to figure out, okay, how quickly can they actually get these things distributed? So that's the next question. So, at that point, how long does it typically take for the distribution of stimulus checks? Well, generally, it's been anywhere between about a week, 10 days, to up to 2 weeks, or possibly even more. In fact, in some instances, it's been about a month. The last stimulus check, I should say, stimulus check number 3 was almost a month for the Social Security, SSDI, SSI, VA beneficiaries. So, in that instance, I would say anywhere between 7 days up to about a month would be kind of the general range that it takes to get these checks out the door. So it totally depends. If they get on it today and they were to pass it today, well then yeah, of course, we could probably get it before, like the Christmas time. Sure, we'd probably get it before then. However, if they delay by 2 weeks, well then what? It pushes the calendar out about 2 weeks, right? So then the question would be possibly sometime in December, possibly before Christmas, possibly before the end of the year. Again, it's all up in the air. So, as you can see, like I said a minute ago, there are a lot of moving parts when it comes to a potential fourth stimulus check, when it could actually arrive, but it really comes down to when Congress actually gets something like this passed. Do they actually add it in as a provision in some kind of package that they have on the table now? Do they add it into its own little legislation and pass it through that way? If that's the case, that would be way faster. It'd be the fastest of all of them to pass it through as its own standalone bill and its own legislation. That would be by far the fastest solution that they could do, is doing it that way. But do they add it into one of the packages or some kind of other bill that's out there right now? That's another option as well. If so, how long does it take them to actually get that through Congress and then on to the president? So, as you can see here, there's a lot of different factors that actually determine how long it would actually take for something like this to happen and how long it would take for them to distribute it. But once it's signed into law by the president, then it goes into action between the Treasury and, well, a couple different entities, I should say. Basically, the Treasury, the IRS, and the Social Security Administration. Now, all of these have different Essentially, all of these have different duties in the distribution of the stimulus check, but in the case of the vast majority of you here in this community receiving Social Security, retirement, disability, SSDI, survivors, or anything like this, then it would probably come down to Social Security and how quickly can they get the files of all of the beneficiaries over to the IRS so that they can start processing those payments to the beneficiaries. Remember that whole ordeal back in about April time, April of 2021? Yeah, we all remember that because we were all waiting around for the payments to come through week after week after week with no answers. And then finally, about 3.5 weeks later, we finally got answers that Social Security didn't send the files over, or whatever the drama was at the time, right? And then finally, once they got the files, it only took a couple more days after that for the IRS to start pumping those payments out into bank accounts and onto Direct Express cards. And boy, that was a nice day, wasn't it? Everybody, I remember reading the comment section that day, and the days before, everybody was seeing their pending payments. Wow, that was a fun time back then, right? I mean, let's be real. It was really stressful at the time, trying to work through that, trying to figure out what was going on, where the payments were, things like that. But when we started to see all those pending payments coming through, man, that turned into a really fun time really fast, right? It was so nice. It was such a relief to see that coming through. But anyway, long story short, for those of you that have been asking, will we be getting a fourth stimulus check? Could it still come in November and or December? Depends how fast they move. If they start moving right now, then yeah, absolutely. It could still be arriving sometime November, December time. Absolutely. However, the longer that they wait on this to get it out, the longer that they drag their feet on this whole thing, the longer that they don't take any action on this, the longer it's just going to push that time frame out, right? So regardless of how long it takes for the IRS to distribute the payments, things like that, it's ultimately down to Congress as far as how quickly they can get this legislation through, pass it through the chambers and onto the president. That's the real wild card that we would have to be waiting on, right? So anyway, for those of you that have been asking, I hope this answers your questions. I hope this clears it up a little bit to better understand what is going on with these payments, if they actually happen. Remember, like I said earlier, nothing has been approved at this point, but realistically, what has been approved by Congress lately? Not a whole lot. So it's not like it's anything abnormal. So with everything going on right now, right? So with that being said, I hope this clears it up a little bit more for you. Of course, I'm watching everything closely. As we get more details on anything, don't worry, I'll be right back here for you, bringing you those updates and helping you out in any way that I possibly can. So with that being said, enjoy. Please make sure to hit the subscribe button right down below the video. If you haven't done so yet, share this video or any others here on the channel with your friends, family, social media, and go back and check out some of the other nearly 2,000 videos right here. So again, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe down below, and I'll catch you again later in the next video.